Whew, got to get my hat right. My man's got to get his thirst quenched. And we're about to get into some hot fantasy football talk here on the Warzone Sports Network. This is the Fantasy Football Junkyard, where we have tried to help you all season. And we help other people more than we help ourselves. That's how giving we are in the season of giving. We're giving away great advice. And sometimes we need to remember to take that advice for ourselves. Am I right?
Yes, you are. And unfortunately, it's been rather tough this year. And like I've said in the past, and you can cue the music after this, fantasy is life and also fantasy is death.
Welcome in. We made it. Hopefully you made it to the fantasy football playoffs. Really hope you made it. I ended up making it in 4 out of 8 leagues. I would have made it in 5, but a commissioner to be unnamed of my dynasty league, Mike on the mic, forgot to change the settings in ESPN to 6 teams before the season started, so we were locked in at 4. I finished 5th, and yeah. So I drafted a dynasty team for the future. Like, I didn't even draft a starting QB this year. I drafted Trey Lance. So I streamed quarterbacks all year, but I got the most out of like CeeDee Lamb, T. Higgins, Michael Pittman. Like, I went, every player on my roster was first or second year. And it was just loaded up that way. I didn't take any known studs, really. I got Najee Harris and Gibson. And I played this young, scrappy squad all the way to the 5th place seed, and instead I get to sit on the outside looking in. I also had another commissioner who forgot to roll back the playoffs 1 week, so my playoffs actually started last week. And I will be complaining about that when we get to that. So this is what this show is going to be. We're going to talk quickly about ads for the playoffs from my guy here from the Fantasy Football Shot Callers. Please go ahead, check his links are down in the description of this video for social media. Follow him there. And then we are going to open up a total complaint session. If you're watching it live, get in the comments. If you watch behind later, get in those comments. Get in some comments and complain about fantasy football with us. But Ben, how are you doing? I feel bad asking. My buddy here, Dos Cadenas. Right here.
I lost a lot. But I won a lot last year, so I feel like something bigger than myself is telling me that I need to be humble and that I need to just keep on working and get through adversity when it comes to me. And, usually I have on this facade when I'm talking to y'all that there is everything's great and grand, but, I'm hurting with you if you're hurting. I'm celebrating kind of with you in some leagues. I made the playoffs in 4 out of my 11 leagues. One league I started off 1-7 and I won like 6 straight or something like that, and I missed the playoffs just by probably like 20 or 30 points. And but nevertheless, I wouldn't have made the playoffs because it was an ESPN league. And ESPN is the worst app to stream on fantasy football. It is. It's worse than CBS. It's worse than NFL because the locked in is just 4 teams. And so, I joined this Instagram league, and yeah, it was just it was painful. I mean, I scored 150 points with starting Austin Walter of the Jets, that 3rd string. And I still scored 146. So, that's all right. My team's got off to a late start. That's cool. Anyways, if you're in the playoffs and need to stream QBs, you got to look at Tua Tagovailoa. He's owning 34% of Yahoo leagues. He's playing the Jets this week. It's going to be great upside. I've even seen some Instagram people saying to start Tua over Lamar Jackson. I wouldn't go that crazy. You may want to go that crazy. I think with Lamar, his practice in the pocket is going to come into play a lot in this next game with him throwing the ball much more than rushing. And he eats no matter what, unless he's like out for the game and costs me a playoff bye. I'm gonna stop venting. I'm gonna wait till after. Next QB, Jimmy G, 30% owned in Yahoo leagues. He's going to go up against the Falcons defense that has been amazing for quarterbacks in the fantasy realm. Next is a guy I made a TikTok on, and he showed out last week. If you got him off the waiver wire and started him, he could have propelled you to the fantasy playoffs, and that's Rashad Penny of the Seattle Seahawks. He's owned in 23% of Yahoo leagues. And guess who's coming back, people? You shouldn't have dropped him. You should have left him on IR, and that's Michael Carter. He's only owned in 63% of Yahoo leagues. So if he's out there, you got to go scoop him. Moving to wide receiver, Marquez Valdez-Scantling had another good game. He's only owned in 50% of Yahoo leagues. Go grab him. Wide receiver Rashad Bateman, 38% owned in Yahoo leagues. Like I said, Lamar Jackson will be throwing it a lot more, I believe, in this game because of his hurt ankle. Luckily, it wasn't a high ankle sprain. Also, look at, going back to running backs, at Justin Jackson. You need to monitor Austin Eckler going forward because it looked like kind of the same deal that Saquon went through. But Saquon is glass. Austin Eckler is more like plexiglass. Wide receiver, the last one for me right now is the future of the Vikings wide receiver 2 slot, and that's KJ Osborne. 38% owned in Yahoo leagues. His target share was crazy last week, even going against Minka Fitzpatrick. I mean, he could have potentially had 2 touchdowns last week. So look at him, 38% owned. You're going to want to draft him next year in the 9th, 10th round, kind of like Mike Williams status. Tight ends, I don't have anything for you. Kicker, just figure it out yourself. And then defense, Cleveland, Patriots, Miami, Chiefs. Any of these, like Cleveland and Miami, you could probably stream. Patriots, if they were dropped for whatever reason by someone because of the bye week, go scoop them. And the Chiefs, you have to, and I've talked about this before, and this will be in the fantasy shot callers testimonies or testaments or whatever, that you do not waste a waiver wire on a defense, but this week, Patriots or Chiefs, you waste the waiver wire on them. All right? Chiefs have been cooking. They 24 points. They had 4 fumble recoveries. They had the same amount of fumble recoveries as sacks last game. Granted, it's going against the Raiders, and the Raiders are so much worse than the Cowboys, and you know who I'm talking to right now. But it's all love, baby. But yeah, so that's defense. Kicker, just one thing about kicker is that it doesn't matter. You want to go with an offense that can get the ball down the field, but is super inconsistent in the red zone. Okay? And so you want to kind of go against, semi-better defense. You don't want to go against really good defenses, but if you're able to stream the kicker for the Panthers, I'd probably go and do that. I think that would be the perfect matchup against the Bills. Is it still Joey Sly, or did he move on? Is there another?
I don't remember. I think he got hurt, or maybe he was placed in protocol or something, because I think they have, like, I don't know. Every week I look up, I'm like, Brett Maher's back in the league? Like, who's Brian Johnston? On the kicker front, I'll say this. This time of year, I tend to look for dome kickers on good offenses. In one of my playoff matchups, I have Prater and I have Nick Folk because I had Folk on a bye. But now I have Prater kicking against the Lions in Detroit. But it might be 7 extra points, but Nick Folk is playing the Colts. So it's like maybe their defense is stingier. Maybe they keep the Patriots out of the end zone a little bit more. And it's in a dome, because I believe the game's in Indianapolis, I believe. So either way, I'm probably going with the dome kicker. And also, too, when drives stall, they let, as we saw last night, Matt Prater kick me into the playoffs. I'll give him some love in a second. And
about him.
I just want to say the Chiefs, don't stream the Chiefs against the Chargers on Thursday night. You do not want to. No way. Are you? Okay, we're going to have a side bet on that. He and I, because if you think I can't be as excited as I am about Thursday night. Like I am just on like freaking level 10 for this game that is for the AFC West. I will not sit here and believe that is a good streaming option because that means that they would dominate my team. So proceed with caution there. Let me ask you one last question before we get to the complaints. I have Taysom Hill against the Bucks. I put in a waiver claim for Jimmy G. I feel more comfortable starting him than I do Taysom Hill against the Bucks.
I would too, and for the biggest reason that this is a revenge game for Tom Brady and that defense. Because if you remember last year, they got shut down by the Saints on national television on Sunday Night Football. So they're nationally televised again. It's NFC South matchup. It's a rivalry, and I think they are gonna hurt Taysom Hill in the second quarter.
He's going. Everything is out. This is really how we're both feeling right now.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
And that's why we're going to our new segment of the show called Let's Complain About Fantasy Football. And we invite any of you to just complain right now about fantasy. Anything in particular you want to say, personal stuff. Well, we'll try to keep it above the belt, but who knows what's about to happen. You want to go first, or do you want me to?
I'll let you go first because I got to figure out how hard I'm going to go. Because
okay, yeah, because I'm not going in on anybody in particular, but I will say this: I had a first round playoff matchup this week in which you play this. You spend all this time, you do all this research, you could set up everything you can. And then I go into the playoffs, and not only do I start Taysom Hill and I get a good thing, you get good numbers out of him. I stream the Titans defense. I get big numbers out of him. I stream a kicker who puts up 15, 16 points. But then McLaurin against DK. I had McLaurin go down with a concussion. I had Keenan Allen ruled out because of COVID protocol. I had Zeke playing injured. I had Urban Meyer burying me. Am I glitching out here? What's going on?
A little bit, but you're good.
Okay. Urban Meyer and the James Robinson thing, it's too much to deal with. I still managed to score like 115 points with like 4 of my top 5 picks giving me like 0 points. McLaurin 0, Keenan Allen 0, Zeke under 10, and James Robinson under 5 points?
Did you start Keenan Allen?
No, I didn't start Keenan. But I'm saying is like I didn't have him in my lineup. I streamed Josh Palmer because I'm a psycho, and everybody knows how much I love Josh Palmer, and I wanted to prove that playing time, this kid's gonna be a stud. Next year, if Mike Williams doesn't re-sign, Josh Palmer is going to be a steal in the middle rounds. But I was sitting there watching it being like, Zeke, you can't give me anything. McLaurin was, even before the head injury, he couldn't beat Dallas's defense because Micah Parsons decided to have the greatest game of his life. Like, I'm just watching my team do nothing. And these are 4 of my top picks. All give me squadouche in a playoff where I went like 9-4 or whatever my record was, 9-5. I don't even know. And it's over like that. It was just, it crushed me to the point where it's like, I took away one thing. I did realize this. The amount of energy I put in the off season doing all the shows and talking fantasy football, I allowed my takes or my opinions to affect my draft too heavily, where I started drafting guys. I was like, oh, I want to be right about this guy. So I would take him maybe a little early just so I could have him on my team. And I missed out on players that I should have taken in that round that I had graded in that round. But just to make sure that I had, like, I said nice things about Trey Sermon. So maybe I reached and got Trey Sermon in like the 6th round when I should have been taking, like Deebo Samuel, or I should have been taking, DJ Moore or somebody like that would have contributed to my team all year long. I could have added, instead of trying to be stubborn and a little arrogant, is what I realized that I needed to scale that back, because honestly, it was watching it go down like that to a team who did probably about as good as he could have done and scored like 130, and I still got like 115 with my 4 top picks giving me less than double-digit points essentially. It was rough. And in another league that I've never won, I've always wanted to win. I had just had fight injuries all year. Gus Edwards in the 4th round, and then Delvin Cook was in and out of the lineup, and I just kept on weathering the storm, and it came down to a win and get in the 8th spot in there. And it's like, Calvin Ridley's gone all year, and I'm filling in with guys like Kadarius Toney or whatever else. And McLaurin, concussion again in this game, right? Even like, it just was so much that like all of these people that I kind of invested in emotionally, and I get they're human beings, they have their own lives, and I would never talk to them about fantasy football ever. But like Darren Waller not playing, it's like, I mean, he didn't do a ton, but he's better than what's available on the waiver wire. I feel better about going into a game with Darren Waller than I do, Foster Monroe or Ricky Seals-Jones or whatever. I mean, I used a 4th round pick on Darren Waller. Like, I want him out there. He's one of my favorite players when he's playing and he's healthy. And now we got
him in the 4th round.
Yeah, it was a steal.
Wow.
It was the turn. It was the pick from 2, so it was like technically end of 3rd into the 4th round. But yeah, it was a steal. It was the only draft I had Waller in, and the player I passed on was Cooper Kupp. So it's like,
I passed on Cooper Kupp for Robert Woods. I could have had Devontae Adams and Cooper Kupp in the Vegas league.
Oh, that's gonna stick with you for a few seasons, because you'll probably never get a chance while those two are in their prime to get them on the same team again.
Yeah. And I could have had Brady if I wanted to be selfish, because I was like, I was like, okay, well, I think I need more depth, but it was like the 9th or 10th round. I was like, but why don't I just like do what I usually do and like get a good quarterback to have behind Patrick Mahomes, so that nothing happens. And I was like, no, I'm not going to be too crazy. I think I'll be good. And I was like, I had in my head like the other voices that I've been hearing, because this is the first year of like actually doing lives and all that kind of stuff. And so like I was like, oh well, we don't really have double quarterbacks. Like I went against what I do, like what I've done for years, because other people do it differently. And that's one thing that I will tell all of you watching right now, is that no matter what anyone says, if you stick with your gut, it usually works out for you. All right? And there's certain things that obviously that you may not be aware of, or like someone's grandmother graduated high school for the first time in 50 years, and that's why you should start them for some heartwarming story or whatever. So that's why I kind of like we're here. Obviously I'm over exaggerating, but at the same time, I'm gonna go on for a little bit right now. Travis Kelsey, you're dead to me. Patrick Mahomes, you're dead to me. Tyreek Hill, you're dead to me. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you were never alive, so I'm not worried about that. Kansas City's defense is probably the only defense or thing about Kansas City that I like right now. Travis Kelsey is probably the worst waste of a first-round pick that didn't get injured, other than Ezekiel Elliott. I'd probably say he's even worse than Zeke, because, you wasted a pick on Jonathan Taylor or Devontae Adams on Travis Kelsey, or even Austin Eckler in some aspects. I did.
Yeah.
Even in tight end premium, I did.
Yeah.
And I drafted the stack of Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelsey. Amazing, right? Robert Woods, Antonio Brown, right? Calvin Ridley, all in the same league, all in a 10-man league. I lost to not make the playoffs by 6 points because, certain people decided to have a game. I can't even look up the stats right now because I already archived it in Sleeper. And then they decided to figure out, and this is going to be the payout. This is going to be the payout structure after, when the playoffs start. Come on, step your game up. If you're commissioning a league, figure it out. Figure it out before the playoffs. I commission leagues, all right? Everything's figured out. And if not, I'll figure it out during the season, not after it's over. What kind of professionalism is that? But people are just people. They're going to make mistakes. But the Kansas City Chiefs are the worst high-flying offense you can draft ever. They're always inconsistent. And I knew that going into the season. So I don't know why I drafted Patrick Mahomes in so many leagues, because I knew he was inconsistent on the fantasy-wise. He is. That's just how it goes. And it's been like that for years. Look at the stats. Look it up. And there's nothing that you can't tell me that shows me that he's been consistent since he's been in the league for a fantasy purpose. Because usually their defense comes alive. And there's no reason why he should have been the number one fantasy quarterback this year going into the year. It should have been Josh Allen. And the fact that everyone has been saying all these things about, Patrick Mahomes is the GOAT and everything. Yeah, he'll win games. He's the NFL GOAT. He's not the fantasy football GOAT.
So there's an old saying called chasing the dragon, right?
Uh-huh.
I believe that's what people are doing with Patrick Mahomes. They're chasing what happened in the MVP year, but if you look at the years since the MVP season, he's had put up great numbers, but with no real consistency for fantasy football. It's almost better to have a quarterback who you can get much later in drafts, get you 16 points a game, rather than Patrick Mahomes 30 points every 3 or 4 weeks, right? So if you can get somebody who has a really good floor, Josh Allen, for where he drafted at, to me, he was even inconsistent this year. He had quite a few stinkers. The fact that he had such a big game this past weekend, which he was real close to being dumping on some teams too, heading into the playoffs. But Kyler Murray with the injuries and stuff like that. Now, Lamar Jackson has been disappointing this year. On one team, I was talking about the stack that'll never happen was Devontae Adams and Cooper Kupp. I was able to get Cooper Kupp, Deebo Samuels, and DK Metcalf. I am leading this league in total points scored. I've qualified, I think, at 3rd place in the playoffs for this league, right? I will never get those 3 receivers on a team again. Lamar Jackson is my quarterback heading into the playoffs. Now, do I go out and just get somebody with a reasonable floor? Do I stream Tua this week in that league, or Jimmy G, or somebody that I think might get me a solid 15 points rather than gamble with Lamar Jackson maybe going out there and getting me 2 points and limping off the field? I don't know what to do about that.
Yeah. And I just pulled up the stats for Patrick Mahomes. It was looking great. It was looking great until week 6. And week 6 was good. And then week 7 hit, the bye-apocalypse. He scored 8.7 points. He has, since then, 2 games over 20, and one was last week that was just over 20.32. he had that big game against the Raiders, but the only 2 games that he
Or against the Raiders.
Clips, or against the Raiders. Let's see. So since then, 8.74, 15, 10. I'm skipping the Raiders. 8, bye week, 13, 20. And that was Raiders again. What he does against the Chargers, who knows? It doesn't matter because you haven't made the playoffs because of Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I only have him in 1-2 QB league. I took him 4th. The players that I was looking at taking in that position all would have been better options. You know, even if I would have taken Zeke at that option, I would have been better off because my RB1 in a 2 QB league then ended up being like David Montgomery, which he's good, but he's not a RB1 on a strong playoff team. So I had Patrick Mahomes, DK, and David Montgomery was like how that draft started for me.
And I mean, now I'm looking at Travis Kelsey. Like, he has been a little inconsistent, but pretty steady. But not like tight end 1 overall. You want over 20 points. If you're drafting him in the first round, that's what you need, and that's what you expect, right? So there's only 2 games where he's had over 20 points this year, and that's the first 2 games. Every other game is 17, and then 6 in week 4, 17, 17, 13 in week 7, 4 in week 8, 17, 19, 18, and then 2 back-to-back 5.7. And that's full PPR, people. So, that's not where you're looking for. He definitely didn't come through when it was crunch time. I think he's been battling somewhat of probably you should just retire and end on a high note syndrome. And lead the way for George Kittle because they finally figured out how to use George Kittle, and they've been winning ever since. So with that being said, I've had a bunch of tough matchups this year. I've lost by 0.2. I've lost by 3. I've lost by 2. I've lost by every single probably margin you can think of, and small margin. It's been rough. It's been tough. Let's blow this whole thing off. It's not been fun, and I started this because it was fun and I was serious, and now I'm losing to people that are just playing around on their Instagram and don't take this serious like they can have a career at this. And this is what I'm here for. And I'm going to slim down all my leagues next year. I'm only going to be probably in at the most 5. So when you get into these leagues, and if you just started your Instagram page or whatever in the past 3 or 4 months and are just kind of finding your way through fantasy football, trying to analyze it for the first year. Next year, my first recommendation is don't join every league you're invited to. Okay?
Yeah.
I did that, and I'm miserable right now. And it's okay to say no.
I also think too that the less leagues you're in, the more fun it could be. Not the less, but the amount of manageable leagues you're in, it can be fun. And I would say that if you are choosy about them, it makes you a better get for more fun competitive leagues. And my thing is that I was in too many sort of other leagues that people weren't that competitive in. And it was I still cared about them because I was committed to it. I said I was set out, I'm going to do this, and it just was too much. So I think that hopefully next year things can be a little bit more normal as far as how fantasy is going, but this is a total crapshoot. When people brag about winning or beating you, it's I think the ultimate thing that should be looked at or rewarded, or one of the things that I've always said should get points, is the total points, the person who wins total points, right? We even had a discussion one year where I put up something and I said the 8th seed should go to the person with the highest points who's not in the playoffs, right? Because if you have 8 teams going, number 8 you're getting in based on a record. No, number 8 should go to the person who had the most points against them all year because they scored a bunch of points. So I think that like gauging and where you're at on fantasy based on things we have no control over, game script, weather, players' attitudes, personal lives, or whatever, we can make the best educated, guesses or whatever you want to call them that we can. But there's so many variables that go into fantasy football that it's like, all right, who actually like over the entire season made the better choices or moves or drafts or whatever. And then I think, how many years in a row do you do it?
And I think also the reporters have not been as great this year either, because and just like all this stuff with like CMC not being put on IR like immediately. Like I've never seen so much like injury unawareness from the NFL, like in total. Like Kareem Hunt, like no one thought he was going to be out for 3/4 of the season when he had his injury. At least I didn't. Maybe I was missing something. Antonio Brown, week to week, they never put him on IR. Why didn't they do anything with that? Like CMC, they waited a week or two to put him on IR for the first time. They did it immediately the second time. Like there's these things and these people that like it sounds like it's their first year. The officiating is horrendous this year. It's like everyone just like was asleep all last year and like didn't really take last year seriously. And like they came into this year expecting like it was going to be some some fun dandy, and now everyone's getting hurt. Everyone. Some teams are down to like their 5th string running back. Like it's crazy. I mean, the NFL I think needs to look in the mirror and figure out what they're doing, because their training staffs on so many different teams are just not up to it. They're not up to the level that they need to be.
So I agree with a large chunk of what you said. One of the things that I learned this year, and I've kind of always subscribed to it, but it really reared its head this season, which is if you are going to make a trade, you can make a trade where you're going to trade away name value and get back multiple players. You could trade Patrick Mahomes in week 2 or whatever. But if you have a player on your team that you drafted early, don't make a decision based on the first 4 games of the season, because a lot of these guys aren't playing any preseason. They're getting no contact. And so that first quarter of the season, they're still shaking off rust from what they are. Like, go look at Justin Herbert, for example, who didn't even dress during one preseason game. Look at his first 4 weeks compared to his last, 11 weeks or whatever, and how many big games are in there. All of the offenses start to get a little bit more cohesion. I guess if you have veterans, it's a little different. Guys like Tom Brady that just been doing it forever. There's going to be less rust there. But if you have younger guys like Joe Burrow, is starting to get a little bit more on sync, starting to cook a little bit more, starting to do a little bit more in garbage time and stuff, especially against however that works itself out. I just think that trading so early on in the season, I watched a lot of people sabotage and trade away good talent because they were upset with what happened in the first few weeks. If you have a guy who's injury prone or injured, yeah, you can take the risk on trading him. But I just think the way that the NFL has changed in that aspect of the preseason, that now you have to almost use the first 4 weeks as your preseason to get a gauge. How many touches are they getting? What has the offense really opened up? Why aren't they using that person? Because otherwise you trade away too much talent and then you think that you got something back, but he was only being used because the offense hadn't fully changed yet. It's just been, fantasy football this year has been, there's more. I bet there's more teams with Kirk Cousins in the playoffs than Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah,
and that's frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, when that's the case, when you have more playoff teams that have Cooper Kupp, Deebo Samuel, and whatever, than like anybody except for like maybe Justin Jefferson of those early wide receivers, like maybe Devontae Adams. But think about all those other wide receivers, like the DeAndre Hopkins, Stephon Diggs, like that list of guys that was going, DK Metcalf, like Calvin Ridley. There's just a long list of people up at the top in those first 4 rounds, massive underperformance, more than I think we've ever seen. And if you got lucky in the later rounds by saying like, I'm going to get this guy here, I'm going to get this person there, you're in the playoffs. If you didn't get those players, if your guesses were DJ Chark and Robbie Anderson, like you're done. But if your guesses were, the aforementioned Kupps and Samuels and those, Cordero Patterson, if one more person brags to me about how they knew Cordero Patterson had a chance to pop.
Well, obviously they don't know anything. They don't. I don't care who it is. I mean, I really don't. No one did. No one said Cordell Patterson is going to be top 25 in fantasy football this year. And if you're saying that, you're lying. You're lying to yourself. You're lying to everyone else. And most importantly, you're lying to the people that listen to you for advice. So that's not cool.
Oh no, this is not people. This the person who has bragged about this the most is in a personal league of mine.
Oh, okay.
I'm not saying this person does not have a following. This person has my cell phone number and they annoy me. That's it. That's all they have. They have my attention and they don't have it for much longer if he doesn't stop telling me. He's somebody that I root for normally, but he's just been kind of annoying with he sent me like a good luck, man. You really need this one to make the playoffs thing. It's like, you don't think I know that? You don't think that like whatever. And he's like sending me like good luck things after McLaurin goes down with a concussion. I was like, fuck off, get out of here. I'm already pissed about it.
Yeah.
And then Jamar Chase starts going off again. He's totally quiet. And then he just starts erupting with like the luckiest. He's so lucky. He's so lucky. Good for Jamar Chase. All right. I got that out of my system. Good luck in the playoffs on whatever teams you have left. I hope you destroy. I am hoping to destroy every matchup I have left. I have 3 teams remaining in the playoffs. And
then even league winners go down too. Like Elijah Moore. He's out for the season. Like
that in that league, in that league, I was just talking to you about that guy. Elijah Moore went down. Calvin Ridley has been gone on that team. Freaking everybody on my team has just disappeared on me. DK Metcalf, who I had in 4 leagues, is one of the biggest disappointments ever. Like, he's one of my favorite players. This is something I would like us to visit when we have time to sit down and do a list. Maybe we sit down with a couple people and we do a live show based on players we think we'll be able to get good value on because of how shitty of years they had.
Yeah.
Like, I bet you any money next year you can get Travis Kelsey later. I bet you can get DK Metcalf later. I bet you can get like a whole group of Calvin Ridley. You might be able to get in like the 7th round if he decided to come back and play football next year.
I'd say
like
later.
Yeah. Because you're gonna have people that are nervous about it. So like, I think that would be a fun thing that we can visit in the off season. We'll figure out some sort of shows. The waiver wire will be done.
I don't know why I didn't see this coming into it, because there were so many injuries already coming into the season. It's just crazy. And I'll wrap it up on that note. Fantasy is life. It's a vibe. We're here for y'all. And Instagram, fantasy_shot callers. TikTok, I did call the Elijah Moore moving into the top 25 wide receiver on TikTok. Without that injury, he would have probably surpassed top 25. So, like I said, it's a vibe. Thanks so much, Tony, for having me on all season. And that was a great vent session. And we do it for you. We do it for the people. So keep tuning in.
I love it. Good luck in playoffs, everybody.